Do you have an older ceiling fan in your home that you would like to replace with a newer ceiling fan? Maybe one that you can use with a remote control? If so, in this video, I will be changing out a ceiling fan that I have in my office, an older Hunter brand ceiling fan, and I'll be changing it out with a newer Honeywell ceiling fan that comes with a remote control. So if you're curious to see how I did that, stay tuned. As always, I'll provide some timestamps in the video description below. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, feel free to do so and jump to a certain part of the video that you might have questions on. If you do have questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. And if you don't mind, if it's not too much to ask, please go ahead and leave a like on the video as well.
This is the ceiling fan that we'll be installing. It's the Honeywell Carnegie 52-inch ceiling fan, not sponsored. But as you can see here, we have all the different parts that come in the box. We have the ceiling fan blades, which are reversible in the top, as well as the fan motor itself and the light fixture, as well as 3 light bulbs that they included, which was a nice added bonus. But you can see here the first step is to actually remove the old ceiling fan. There were a total of 2 screws on my existing Hunter ceiling fan. I simply loosened those screws, as you can see here, and there was actually a small little lever that was holding the ceiling fan up. So after I removed the screws and lifted it off of that lever, I was able to remove that cover plate. Now what's interesting about this cover plate is that not only is the wiring housed internally, you can see there that there's actually a metal hook that the ceiling fan is hanging off of. So I simply went in and I loosened my wire nuts. I will not be giving you wiring advice in this particular video, so go ahead and don't expect that. Lower your expectations. But I just simply loosened my wire nuts and then I lifted the ceiling fan off of that hook that's part of that hanger that's attached to the ceiling, and the ceiling fan came right off, as you can see there. So once I did that, you can see I'm glaring at the camera some. I backed out the screws that were holding that plate to the outlet box itself. And once I actually loosened both sets of screws that were part of that box that was holding that plate to the box, if I can get it out, I'm sorry, I was able to remove that plate. This ceiling fan model actually had some spacers or some vibration absorbers, it seemed like, that I just simply removed from the wall. But you can actually see there that they stained the wall a kind of a dingy brown color, which was not something that I expected. But you can see here I'm following the instructions that came with the ceiling fan. I'm loosening these screws that came with this mounting bracket. So the way that this actually came, you have the cover that covers up all the wiring and everything, but the actual bracket that the ceiling fan hangs off of comes pre-screwed in. So I'm simply removing that and separating it out from the cover, and then I'm going to go ahead and install that cover in the ceiling. So when I did this, I reused the bolts that came with the previous ceiling fan to attach this bracket to the outlet box, because I knew those screws worked with my outlet box. But I just went ahead, eased those screws in gently, as you can see here with my drill. And once that was installed, I was able to go back to our friend, the instruction manual. So the instruction manual will tell you that you have this base part here and this notch in the base part of the actual motor itself, and you need to take out these screws. These screws are actually in place to hold the ceiling fan blades in place. This screw that I'm backing out here is actually for this down rod. So that's the next step in the plan, is we're going to install this down rod. So what we're going to do is we're going to snake all the cables through the different protective covers we have and through the down rod itself for the ceiling fan. And if you've done any ceiling fan work in the past, you probably know that the ceiling fans typically come with longer wires than you might need for a short down rod. And the reason for that is if you're using a long down rod, you don't want to have to, try to extend those wires. So by giving you longer wires, you can cut the wires to length. From here, I've threaded all of my wires through everything that they needed to be threaded through. I'm actually going to go ahead and install the bolt to hold that down rod onto the motor assembly. So you have to actually stick that original pin you have through, and then you use the pin that came with the pin, if that's not confusing enough, to actually hold that pin into place. Then you tighten the screws just to make sure that down rod doesn't become loose through vibrations or anything like that. And once you've gotten to that point, you have your trusty wire cutters that you probably own by this point. But you just go ahead and snip off those wires and go ahead and strip those down for your leads. and you refer back to the instruction manual because there's a mystery wire on this ceiling fan. Turns out that if you're in Canada, you need to take an extra step to install your ceiling fan, which is that metal wire right there. I cut that off because I'm not in Canada, I'm in the US, so I don't have to install that to a joist in my attic. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and slip my motor assembly into the bracket that I've already installed, and it went in fairly easily, no complaints here. I do kind of look over at the camera to make sure that everything's in order, and you can see what that looks like as it hangs from the ceiling. Now, this is the actual gizmo that comes with, that's a very technical term, gizmo, by the way, but this is the gizmo that comes with the ceiling fan. This is for the remote control, and the instructions itself will show you how to install that into the bracket so that you can do all your wiring. And I'll show you as I went through and actually try to stick it in through the brackets. But I'm not going to show you the wiring today because I don't want to draw the ire of anyone on YouTube. You can't please everyone, but this is a small ask. So I simply followed the instructions that came with the ceiling fan and were able to go ahead and get everything wired up. And then I simply push that cover plate back up to seal everything and tighten the screws. And just like that, you have the motor of the ceiling fan hung. You have all the wires covered up. It doesn't look as bad. You do have the slight yellowing from those particular rubber spacers that were there for the previous ceiling fan, but a little bit of paint should touch that right up. As you can see here, I'm actually going to go ahead and assemble the blades. I do that off camera. It's a fairly straightforward installation. But then you have to actually install the blades while the motor's hanging. Could you do this on the ground? Yes, but it would be very difficult to try to hang the motor and do all of your wiring work if you had the blades attached and you were doing all that over your head. So I did go ahead and follow the instructions and attach these to the motor itself after I had already hung the motor. So it makes for some overhead work, but this is really not that hard to do. I mean, let's be honest, I'm doing it, so it's not that hard to do. But you just simply put in the blade. You have installed the blades by this point the way that you want them to be installed because they are reversible. So you have your color preference showing, and you simply push them into this motor assembly and tighten those screws that you took out earlier to hold these blades in. And once you're done with all that, you have this wonderful looking ceiling fan with your 5 blades at 52 inches total. So once you've done that, you loosen these screws that are on the motor assembly so that you can actually hook your light fixture to that. Once you've loosened these, you're going to make your electrical connection with those push-in connectors, and then you're going to take your your light assembly, and attach it to your motor assembly by simply tightening those screws that you had already loosened. There are little notches that you slide the screws into place that it holds them, and you just tighten the screws down. So these are the light bulbs that came with the ceiling fan. I'm just going ahead and gently screwing those in. So far, and this ceiling fan's been in operation for about a week, the bulbs have worked fine. My house hasn't burned down, so I have that going for me, right? But I'm simply installing those light bulbs. And you can see here that this is the remote that came with the ceiling fan, so I'm just going to go ahead, plug in that battery there, and I think I dropped the remote. Oh, is this? It's my son Grogu. Grogu Parker, how are you doing? Oh, no, I'm not ready for that yet. Don't use the ceiling fan remote. Wait, no, don't mash that button, please. I don't know if it works yet. Does it work? Oh, yes, it does. Imagine that. The ceiling fan blades going like crazy. Ceiling fan works great, but what if I messed up the wiring on the lighting? It might not work. Don't try the lighting. Oh no, not again. Oh, look, the lighting works too. So ceiling fan blades and the lighting. Thank you, Grogu. Oh, he's angry. How did that tape get there? Should have stayed with Luke.
So that's the video. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that it has been helpful for you in whatever you're looking to do at your home, if for nothing more than a couple laughs, right? If you have any comments, feel free to leave those in the comments, ask any questions you might have. And also, if you like seeing videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I try to upload videos every week on Mondays, so stay tuned for those, and I hope that I'll see you in the next video.